It all started on a regular Saturday morning. I was out in my backyard, sipping coffee and getting ready to mow the lawn, when I noticed something strange. An extension cord running from the side of my house all the way under the fence. At first, I thought maybe a contractor left it there by accident, but curiosity got the better of me. I followed the cord, and to my shock, it led straight into my neighbor's house, Karen, the HOA board member who's always been a little too involved in everyone's business. Now, if you know anything about Karen, you know she's the type who leaves warning notes if your trash can is out 5 minutes late. She's reported kids for drawing with chalk on sidewalks and once threatened to fine me for having a wind chime. So imagine how stunned I was to find out she was the one stealing my electricity for who knows how long. I knocked on her door, calmly asking her about the cord. Her smile dropped in an instant. Instead of explaining, she immediately went on the defensive, yelling, accusing me of trespassing. Within seconds, she pulled out her phone and called 911, claiming I was threatening her and trying to break in. All I did was ask a question. The crazy part? When the police showed up, she acted like I was the criminal. She had this whole fake story ready, painting herself as the victim. I tried to show the officers the extension cord, but Karen kept interrupting, practically begging them to arrest me on the spot. Now I'm standing there, stunned, with 2 officers, looking at me, Karen still yelling in the background, and that cord still plugged into my house. What happens next? You won't believe how this all plays out. The officers asked me to step aside while they talked to Karen. I could hear her going on, saying I was aggressive and had barged onto her property. Meanwhile, the cord was still clearly trailing from my outdoor outlet straight to her house. I stood there, hands in my pockets, trying to stay calm, but inside, I was fuming. I mean, how long had this been going on? My electric bill had been higher than usual the past couple months, but I thought maybe it was just summer air conditioning costs or something simple like that. Turns out, I'd been powering Karen's house without even knowing it. A few minutes. Later, one of the officers walked over to me. He wasn't rude, but he had that serious tone, asking me what exactly happened. I explained it all. How I found the cord, how it led to her house, how I just asked her about it, and she flipped out and called 911. I even offered to show him the meter and where it was plugged in. He nodded but said they needed to get both sides of the story before deciding anything. I could tell they weren't sure who to believe. What made it worse was that Karen had gathered a couple neighbors on her lawn by then, probably folks she'd already filled with her version of the story. They were whispering and giving me side eyes like I was the one doing something shady. I couldn't believe it. This was the same woman who once wrote up a neighbor for having their garage door open too long. Now she was stealing electricity and trying to flip the script on me. And here's the thing. There's still so much more I didn't know yet. Why was she using my power? Was it just one outlet or more? And how long had this been going on without me noticing? Things were only about to get weirder from here. While the officers talked quietly near the patrol car, I walked back toward the fence, needing to see everything again with fresh eyes. The orange extension cord snaked through the gap like it belonged. There, tucked just enough under some leaves to not be immediately obvious. That's probably why I hadn't noticed it sooner. I started thinking back. The time my breakers tripped for no reason, the random surges, the weird humming sound near the outlet box. It all started to click. Karen had always seemed obsessed with everyone else's behavior, but this was next-level shady. She'd been running some serious power, too. Maybe AC, maybe appliances. That wasn't just petty stealing. That was a full-on electric leech setup. I even started wondering if this was the first time she'd done something like this. I mean, how do you even think to plug into someone else's house like it's no big deal? That's when another neighbor, Jake, wandered over. We're not super close, but we've talked a few times. He leaned in and said, "You're not the only one. I caught her trying to plug into my outdoor outlet last winter." She said, "It was an emergency, and claimed she'd only use it for a few minutes, but when I went out hours later, it was still hooked up. I stared at him, stunned. Jake shrugged like he'd buried the memory, not wanting trouble. Now I was sure. This was a pattern. Karen had been hopping from house to house, probably whenever she thought no one would notice. But why? Was she behind? On bills? Hiding something from the HOA board? Or just using her position to keep people too scared to push back? I didn't have answers yet, and the officers weren't giving away much either. Karen was still talking to them, waving her hands, and acting like she was terrified of me. But I wasn't the one stealing. I wasn't the one lying. The deeper I looked, the more I started to wonder how far this whole thing really went. And who else knew? As the sun started dipping lower, casting long shadows across the yard, the mood shifted. The officers finally walked back over to me, still calm but clearly unsure how to proceed. One of them asked if I'd be willing to unplug the cord and just let things cool off until it could be looked into further. I stared at him for a second, honestly not believing what I was hearing. She steals my electricity, calls 911 on me, and I'm the one being told to back down? Still, I said fine, I'd unplug it, but I wasn't letting it go. I walked over to the outlet and pulled the cord loose. Instantly, I heard shouting from Karen's yard. She came storming over to the fence, yelling that I had no right to touch her property. I reminded her it was my outlet, on my house, and I wasn't going to let her steal from me. She threatened to file a report with the HOA and said I was interfering with her emergency setup. Emergency? What kind of emergency runs through someone else's power? At that point, a third neighbor, Lisa, who lives across the street, stepped outside and started filming everything from her porch. She'd seen the cops, the shouting, and now Karen losing it in full view. Karen noticed her too, and suddenly changed, her tone, playing it calm again, saying she misunderstood and just needed temporary help. But her voice was shaking. She knew she was losing control of the story. That's when I spotted something strange. A second cord, thinner, running from the side of her garage toward a covered outlet behind the bushes. I hadn't seen it earlier. My heart started racing. Was she pulling from more than one house? I followed the line with my eyes and realized it wasn't just plugged into my house. It might be connected to Jake's, too. Now everything felt bigger. This wasn't just a neighbor dispute anymore. This was something deeper, something planned. And I had no idea what I was about to uncover next. As I traced that second cord with my eyes, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just a one-off accident or misunderstanding like Karen was trying to make it seem. This was deliberate, and worse, there was no telling how many other homes she might have tapped into. I quickly waved Jake over, pointed toward the bushes and said, "You see that?" He followed the line with his eyes, and his whole expression changed. "That's my outdoor outlet," he said quietly. "She's doing it again." Karen must have noticed us looking because she suddenly stepped back behind her fence like she was trying to block our view. But it was too late. We both saw it. 2 cords, running from 2 different houses, both connected to hers. This wasn't just about high electric bills anymore. It felt bigger, like some strange, low-level scam happening right under everyone's nose. The police were still lingering near their car, and I decided to walk back over and let them know what we'd found. I kept my voice calm but firm, explaining that Karen wasn't just pulling from my power, she was drawing electricity from Jake's house too. One of the officers looked a little uneasy now, realizing this wasn't a simple neighbor misunderstanding. They walked with us back to the side yard, and when they saw both cords leading into Karen's garage, the tension finally started to shift. But then, just when it seemed like the truth was catching up to her, Karen came rushing out of her front door, waving a stack of papers. "I have permission!" she shouted, holding up what looked like old printed emails and typed letters. "These are agreements! Emergency energy assistance agreements!" she called them. I blinked in disbelief, What even is that? The officers paused, flipping through the pages. Nothing looked official. No signatures, no HOA letterhead, just vague wording, like she'd typed them up herself. But the real twist came when Lisa, the neighbor recording everything, walked up holding her phone and said, "You're not going to believe what I just found online about Karen." Everything was about to change. Everyone turned toward Lisa as she stood there with her phone, a mix of shock and disbelief on her face. "Karen isn't just some over-controlling HOA lady," she said slowly. "She's been sued before, for the same thing, in another neighborhood. She used to live on Maple Ridge Lane, and there's a whole post about her on a community watch forum. Same story, stealing power from neighbors, calling the cops when she got caught, and claiming it was all a misunderstanding." She handed her phone to one of the officers, who started reading through it silently. Karen's face went pale. For the first time, she didn't have anything to say. No yelling, no fake tears, no blaming anyone. Just silence. The officer holding the phone looked up and asked her point blank, "Did you live at this address last year?" She didn't answer. She just stood there frozen, gripping her stack of fake agreements. At that point, it felt like the whole street had stopped to watch. Jake shook his head, muttering under his breath. I stepped back, letting the moment settle, watching as the officers started to piece everything together. They unplugged both cords and told Karen they'd be filing an official report, possibly even contacting the utility company for further investigation. One officer said flat out, "This could be considered utility theft. I thought that was it. Case closed." But just as the officers began wrapping up, Lisa leaned in again and said, "There's something else weird. That forum post said Karen used a fake name, Denise. She changes her name when she moves to new neighborhoods." My jaw dropped. I looked at Karen, if that was even her real name, still standing there with that tight, forced smile, like she was already thinking about her next move. That's when I realized she didn't just steal electricity. She stole trust. From neighbors, from entire communities, and now, who knew how many places she'd done this before? We'd stopped her, for now. But something told me this wasn't the last time we'd hear about her. After the officers left and the cords were finally removed for good, the neighborhood felt different, like a weight had been lifted. Karen disappeared into her house, slamming the door behind her, and for the first time all day, the street was quiet. Jake and I stood by the fence for a minute, just shaking our heads. Neither of us could believe how far things had gone. From a weird power cord to uncovering a whole pattern of fraud, it was something out of a movie. Later that week, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Karen didn't show up, but the board voted to temporarily suspend her position until they could investigate everything more formally. Neighbors who had once kept their distance started coming forward with their own weird stories. Karen snooping around yards, tampering with utility boxes, even offering to help people lower their power bills. It became clear that this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a long-term scheme, and we'd only scratched the surface. I called my electric company to get a usage breakdown, and sure enough, my bill had been spiking for 3 months straight. Jake had the same issue. They said they'd be opening an investigation on their end too, since electricity theft is taken seriously. It was good to know we weren't crazy, and that it was finally being handled. Looking back, it's wild how something so small, just an extension cord, unraveled such a big story. It reminded me how important it is to trust your gut, speak up, and stay alert, even when the issue seems minor. Karen, or Denise, or whatever her real name is, may have pulled this off before, but not this time. Because in this neighborhood, we look out for each other. And now, no one's stealing electricity on our watch.